Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of GovCon Coffee and Issues. I'm joined again by my friend and co-host, Mr. Michael Lejeune from RSM Federal. Hey, Michael, how you doing today?
Hey, Carroll, doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing awesome, man. So thank you for being with us. So we're going to just go ahead and jump right on in today and talk about today's topic, which is the big news in the GovCon realm. And that is the infrastructure bill that finally got passed. I don't know how long that thing has been out there floating around the halls of Congress, but it's been a long time. Probably over a year now, huh?
Yeah, it's been floating around for a while, and we've seen a lot of amendments and things going on through this thing. And was it going to be 100 quadrillion whatever dollars, and then whatever it was going to be, and then looking aside now it drops to like 1.2 trillion or something along those lines. And you made a really good point before we started the show earlier, in that I don't think there's anybody, especially me, that is an expert in this thing. So I've gone through and looked through a lot of it, but the version I'm reading is over 1,000 pages. And so that is a lot of information to look at, and your eyes can drag through it and everything. And so by all means, fact check us on any of the stuff we talk about today, but we're not experts on this, but we have gone through most of, at this point, like I've searched through a lot of the major stuff. I think I have total somewhere around 250 pages that I've actually slowly read through this thing. And so I've kind of got a high level of it. But even at 250 pages, I've only hit on 50 of the programs that are in there at this point, and about $335 billion. So there's still a lot more for me to read on this thing. But today I'm going to help give a few of the highlights that I've read so far. And in addition to the actual just straight up what I would consider infrastructure projects, there's a few other things that got tacked on into this thing that we'll highlight today as well.
Yeah, man. So thanks for actually reading 200 pages of it. Because I got to be honest, as I mentioned also before when we were talking, I typically don't really dive into these things when they're still kind of in the process. I mean, because there's so many changes that happen, and it's just once things actually happen, that's when I like to dive in. This just happened a couple of days ago, 2-3 days ago, but this is massive. I mean, this is like the largest infrastructure spending package by far in history. And a couple of the things that I wanted to share out of this is just looking back. And I know we've talked a little bit about this on your podcast inside of this big bill that's coming right now it's here. Right. And what we can talk about is going back a decade when I was in contracting. And the last big infrastructure package, or the stimulus package per se, that was passed was the American Reinvestment and Recovery Act of 2009. And I saw some pretty interesting things in that. And I think that we can take away a few lessons learned and probably make a few predictions about probably what are going to be some issues that are going to be faced inside of this massive opportunity by both government agencies as well as the prime contractors, both large and small, and even subcontractors as they ramp up to jump in and get a piece of this pie. So
Right. And I think one of the first things is, as you're reading through and you're a contractor in this space, in the construction space, maybe you've focused on roads, bridges, that type of work, right? And that is a bulk of what we see in here. There's also strategic planning. There's millions allocated for planning. So project and program managers and stuff like that. There's millions, probably billions allocated for that kind of stuff. But as you start to read through this thing, one of your first frustrations is going to be when. When is the money? Where are we going to see it? So this thing covers FY22 through FY26. But here's the big but right out of the beginning. There's a lot of things that as I read through, it says will establish within the next 180 days or whatever time frame they put on it. So there's a lot of this stuff that they have, in my opinion, they've slapped it together and they've said, okay, we're going to do this. But now that it's passed, we've got 6 months to kind of create an office for this, 6 months to pick an undersecretary for this program, 6 months to start to look at the budgets. And when you look at the budgets, they're not specific. They're very, very vague of, hey, we're going to do 25 million a year over the next 5 years. Hey, we're going to do 110 million the first year, 110 million the second year, of whatever the thing is. So it's just very generic amounts they've allocated because they don't know. You'll also see the word pilot program all over the place. We're established this pilot program and that pilot program. And so there's a lot of those things that when you see them, again, the question's going to be, so when are we going to see the money? And my best guess is over the next few months. Over the next few months, you should be tracking a lot of these keywords in SAM. You should be looking for this kind of stuff. There are some things like the PROTECT program. It's called Promoting Resilient Operations for Transformative, Efficient, and Cost-Saving Transportation. They couldn't have picked a smaller name for that, right? But the PROTECT program, so that's a keyword that you need to be monitoring on SAM. There's also the Minority Business Development Act. There's something you should be looking at. It's not going to affect you directly, but there's some things that are going to come out of that program. The application of the Buy America preference is talked about in here. There's several other things like that we can look at and say, okay, here's keywords we can start to look at. Money has been allocated to a lot of these departments. Now is a good time to probably start talking to these people. Oh, no, it's not. So I guarantee you, the people that are going to be receiving these monies, these funds, they don't know exactly what they're going to be doing. Again, there's a lot of pilot programs and things like that. And that's my first piece of advice here, is just to be a little bit patient with this, because I guarantee you more information is going to come out over the next couple of weeks. And then after that 180-day period, we're probably going to start getting a lot more detail. So if I were to look at that now, this is coming out in November. What would we say? January, February, March, April. So probably in the April timeframe, if not before, we're likely to start seeing stuff coming out on SAM. So right now it's educate yourself on what's in here, maybe the targets that you want to focus on. And then somewhere by that April timeframe or before, that's when we're going to start to see more of these things. The other thing that I wouldn't call it a frustration, but the other thing that you will see in here is there's a lot of areas where they talk about grants up to $5 million or up to $20 million, up to whatever. Again, they don't know exactly what a lot of these things are going to cost. And so you see a lot of that. And so we don't have a specific number nailed down for those. But then again, there's other areas where there's specific numbers. I was talking to you before the show about the wildlife crossing one. Yep. And I was trying to pull that one up here real quick. I think it was
we had a lot of Louisiana jokes going into that, but we won't share them here.
If you'd like to know that post show, if you're like to know that post show, we could talk about that. But yeah, like the wildlife crossing program, there's $350 million allocated over 5 years to that, because apparently wildlife caused like $8.3 billion worth of damage per year. And so I think the joke on that was, can't you see like a GS-19 in a PowerPoint slide in the middle of a forest trying to teach deer how to use the crossing? Like, I don't know what the pilot program is going to be. And I joke about that. But, it is a serious issue. It happens all the time. It does take lives, and there's a lot of things that happen there. So there's a pilot program for that. And so we see a lot of pilot programs with the U.S. Forestry and organizations like that. One of the things that I noticed is the Commerce Department handling a lot of these programs. So that to me is a little bit of a change that I hadn't really thought about when this comes out. So you're going to see a lot of things that come through them, and they manage with an undersecretary of some sort. But then there's all this stuff you do expect. So like the Federal Aid Highway Program, $270 billion going to that. Transportation, infrastructure, and innovation programs, tribal transportation programs. So if you are working with the Native American-owned type of stuff, there's programs for that if you're working on any of these tribal lands and things. The National Park Service, we talked a little bit about Puerto Rico Highway Program, a lot of money going into the Puerto Rico Highway Program. The bridge investment thing, a couple of $1 billion going into bridge investment, congestion relief, charging and fueling infrastructure, $2.5 billion going into that. And that's what I've read so far. One of the things I've found with the amendments is you're going through and you're reading, and it says $2.5 billion allocated to charging and fueling infrastructure. But then you get 100 pages down and it says, we're going to allocate another $100 million to this for this specific program. So it's not just that top level money there's more money being assigned to it. We've got rural surface transportation grants, planning grants, a lot of money in here. I said this earlier for planning community resilience and evacuation routes. You and I have come from Louisiana. That's a massive problem when you're trying to get out of hurricanes and they tell you got 2 weeks to get out, which that was always the thing when I was a kid is they tell you, hey, you've got 2 weeks to get out. A lot of people can't afford to leave 2 weeks before that. So they try to leave 3 or 4 days before something. And then there's just the congestion every which way in Louisiana,
it's hard
Texas,
to predict
Florida.
Too, 2 weeks out, like, where's he going to go? So people aren't leaving their houses until like 2 days out, right?
Yeah. 2 weeks out, you're thinking it's going to hit New Orleans. And next thing you know, it's hitting Lake Charles, where my family's from. There's a 4-hour difference there. And so there's a lot of confusion there, but infrastructure and money allocated to that sort of stuff, university money, reconnecting communities programs. There's a ton of those kind of things in here. And then we get to stuff like the Minority Business Development Act. So you'll be able to go and search that and see, well, what are they doing there? Well, they've set up all these minority business centers around the country. I think there's 22 centers right now or something along those lines. They're going to develop more of those and they're going to give them money. It looks like 15 to 20 million per fiscal year for the next 5 years. They're going to dump into that program. One of the things that a lot of people talked about was Buy America. So when it comes to like the iron and steel and other infrastructure stuff for this, they're saying unless there's a waiver, it will be made manufactured in America. They're not saying, hey, 70%. They're saying it's all going to be made here, unless there's a waiver and unless there's a reason why, hey, it's something commercial off the shelf that we can just get and there's a good reason for that. They also say they're going to establish buyamerican.gov within 1 year. So that's one of those that within a year, they're going to have that domain. Now, first thing I did was I went to buyamerica.gov and it redirects you to SAM. So today, if you type in buyamerica.gov, it's going to redirect you to SAM at the moment. One of the things we've talked about in here before is the percentages for small business concerns. So today, that's kind of all over the map. It's like 3%, 4%, and there's some projections of how they move that. They're saying except to the extent that the secretary determines otherwise, that number will be no less than 10%. So that's moved to 10% across the board on the spending that's going to be happening here. The minority business development centers, the numbers here are about 15 to 20 million per fiscal year for budgeting and planning, but they're putting in 550 million altogether just for the centers and administrative and all that kind of stuff. Then they get into rural programs. So it's not just going to be in big cities. There's going to be rural programs for the minority business centers. My last note on here, which is to learn more about this one, is the one thing that no one in America is going to like is the $10 million they set aside for a pilot program for the per mile user fee. So when you get in your car, you're going to have to start tracking the mileage to pay a tax on that. So we've heard about that. There's a pilot program and they are looking for volunteers on that. So I don't know who's going to want to volunteer for that pilot program.
I'll volunteer you, Michael, since you announced it here to the world. Now you can give us updates as you
should volunteer me
in it.
You should actually volunteer me and I'll assign my car to it because I work out of the house and I almost never leave. So I would be the one person that totally offsets the program. There's some things like that in there as well. Like I said, I haven't gotten through the whole thing. That's like, I wanted to try to give a quick rundown of a bunch of the highlights that I saw in there so far, with only 250 pages, digested at this point. So another almost 1,000 to go.
Gosh, what a slacker, man. I was expecting that you got through all 1,000 pages.
I did 250 pages in the last 24 hours. So
that's awesome, man. And
yeah.
Just to piggyback off of a couple of things that you said there, one of the suggestion on kind of just being patient, as some of the agencies start to roll things out. I think that actually, if you went down and you downloaded that document, it's like 1,039 pages, I think, in total. Yeah. It might take you until April just to get through it all, But I wanted to kind of share a little speed reading tip that's very helpful. And this is also helpful, like if you're reading a solicitation and you're trying to point out some keywords. But for example, if you are in cybersecurity, when you open that document, just do the Control F. And basically, that's on a PC. On Mac, it's Command F. But do that little keyword lookup tool. Do your first read through of the act through the keyword search, like cyber. I did that as just a test, and there was probably like over 300 something instances of the word cyber. What's kind of cool about this bill, and it's different than the last act back in 2009 that was passed, is that there's a lot more spending across a lot of layers. Inside of the last bill, I saw like a lot of spending in kind of roads and bridges and buildings, you know. And so what I really like about this package is that it really spends a lot of money across the board. It makes also a lot of investments. You mentioned the Minority Business Development Agency and some additional funding that they're getting to help minority-owned businesses get ramped up to participate. So that's kind of like a double impact, right? So it's like you're getting resources to support you, and then you are also getting opportunities that are going to be flowing down on the other side of that. Another program that I'm anticipating is going to see a lot of activity is the Department of Transportation Small Business Transportation Resource Center. So if you wanted to Google that group, DOT, Small Business Transportation Resource Centers, and they have a really unique charter, and they're almost a little way like PTAC, the Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, which is also another great resource we'll encourage you to take advantage of inside of getting ramped up. But that specific program works with a lot of Department of Transportation projects, both at the federal level, but also a lot of this money, we're going to shift a little bit, and we're going to talk about where this money will kind of be showing up and flowing down through. But one of those areas is like the state and local projects. So a lot of that money will get provided to the state and local agencies through grants that they're going to use to basically build up their roads, their bridges, their infrastructure. And so this DOT, Small Business Transportation Resource Center program, is designed to help firms that are eligible for DBE participation. You might have heard of DBE, Disadvantaged Business Enterprise. It's actually a federal certification, but it's managed at the state level, and each state has their own separate certification pathway for DBE. This particular center actually helps businesses both get into that program and also get them up to speed on other things. So there's so many great funded programs that already exist out there, like the PTACs, like the MBDAs, the DOT Small Business Transportation Resource Centers. Definitely, if you're not leveraging or using any of those programs just yet, look them up, Google them, find those programs in your area and make use of them. The other thing that I wanted to mention too is if you are looking for the actual law, the actual act, it's actually titled HR 3684 Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. So if you just actually Google Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, if you go to the official link at congress.gov, you'll probably see that in your top results. If you click on that, you click on, there's a little like tabs across kind of like middle of the page, says text. There's the full text there, but you can also download a copy of that PDF and do your little keyword search to see what areas of investment the government may be looking to make inside of what you do. Then you can start also finding news articles and other things on that situation, where that money's going, and start to identify the government agencies that are going to be recipients of some of that money, and some of the contractors that are at the prime level that are already in place doing infrastructure work, getting involved with them, building a relationship, getting set up inside of their vendor rosters, right? Or their vendor management databases, whatever those may be. And then ask them, what do I need to do to get ready for what's coming down the pipeline? So here's the issue, Michael, that I see is going to probably happen inside of all of this, since this is Coffee and Issues. So back 10 years ago, a lot of what happened was that there was so much spending that was being pushed through all of these projects. A lot of the regular contractors that do business with the government started to get tapped out, and they were like, I can't do anymore. I'm not even going to bid on this project that you just put out. I was actually in that situation as a contracting officer, putting out projects that nobody was bidding on. And so this became a problem for the government. And so I see a few issues inside of this. And we just discussed like some COVID mandates. We actually have a webinar on this coming up here shortly. But, you got the COVID mandates happening, which is people are leaving the workforce. And just in normal times, I've always heard, every time I heard a prime or even a government agency state their big problems, they say part of the problem is that couple of big things. Like one, they have a hard time finding well-qualified contractors to sub out to. And also they have a hard time finding the skilled labor to come in and do the work.
Yeah.
So I see this as there's going to be a lot of issues inside of this, even though it's a massive opportunity for government agencies and prime contractors. So the advice that I would give to small businesses out there, if you're looking to get yourself a slice of this pie, start to visualize and see kind of where those contractors are, where those government agencies are in your area, not just federal, but also state and local, that's going to be getting those contracts. And as you start to make sense of everything here, then you can also start to have those good conversations when the time is right to ask questions about it. Where do you need me to be positioned so I'm at the ready? And also, if you say you're having a hard time finding well-qualified contractors, what do you mean by well-qualified? What do we need to show you? Is it bonding? Is it insurance? What is it? And so those are just a couple of things that I see as both potential opportunities as well as some potential issues that are going to happen once all of this money starts to flow down to the marketplace.
Yeah, absolutely. And the first issue that I mentioned earlier was people are going to be frustrated because they're like, where's the money? Where's the money? And it's like, it's going to take a couple of months. It's going to take a couple of months before they start actually doling out some of this money. Some of it may happen faster, but when you're looking at some of the pilot programs, there's a lot of things that need to be done there in the planning stage. So if you're a company listening to this and you do consulting, management consulting, strategic planning, any of those sort of things, your time is up first. Like you're going to be called to bat right out of the gate on this to do that type of work, because these organizations, especially the brand new ones where they're forming agencies and programs, they're going to need people to come in and help with that type of stuff. So I think those people are going to see a lot of money right up front in this, maybe even during the next 6 months. And then as it starts to roll out, they're going to continue to see money during the entire time. And then you're going to start to see the real infrastructure kick in where people are doing stuff like, one of the ones I was looking at is construction of ferry boats and ferry terminal services. They're not going to do that tomorrow. That's going to take planning. Right. There's a lot of planning that has to happen for that. There's some stuff in the Appalachian Regional Energy Hub Initiative, the Denali Access System. So we see stuff kind of spread out all over the place. There's one for an invasive plant elimination program. So there's all these different plants, and they talk about the plants that need eliminating. They spell those out. So I think you're spot on with how to go through it first and look at keyword. What are the stuff that we do and where does that show up in here? Because normally I'd say, hey, just stick to your one agency, stick to the forest agency or whatever. And you may do that here, but you need to look at that management consulting or planning or whatever that keyword is and see where it's at. And it may open up opportunity for you to work in a new agency that you didn't know was going to do this. And a lot of these are brand new programs, stuff that you've never seen before. Yeah. And so that's another challenge too, where we've got people that have been head down and they've say, well, hey, I only work at Department of Transportation. Well, guess what? Not all this money is going to flow through that organization. It's going to flow through all these different places. And so maybe you need to look at the Forestry Service. Maybe you need to look at another organization. Everybody needs to look at commerce because, like I said, there's different things that are coming out, and commerce is going to be managing that, not DOT. And not for everything, but there's different things, and it spells that out. So when you're looking at this stuff, one of the things that always grabs my eye is as I'm flipping from different pages, you'll see a heading. And the heading will say something just as simple as invasive plant elimination program. And I'm like, well, what is that? And you start to look and it'll say, hey, it's going to be established under this agency. And here's the budget. Here's the things they're going to be looking to do. And so now I can go, okay, well, I wasn't interested in that before because they've never had an invasive plant elimination program, or I didn't know they did. Now they do. That's something we can do. And it falls under what agency? Okay, now we need to start targeting this. And so I think that's what it'll help people do, is just kind of open their eyes to some of the stuff that's coming. They can start doing the planning. One thing that I guarantee you're going to start to see a lot of is webinars, industry days, things like that, where these organizations are going to be saying, hey, we're rolling out the tribal highway program, and we want to educate contractors and industry on this. We need input on this. Guess what you also see in times like this? RFIs, sources sought. Probably a lot of sources sought as they go through this, because that's really how the government says, hey, we've been tasked to do this.
Right.
We don't know how to do this, or we don't know who.
Exactly.
We need a source for this. And so being on the lookout for those, and not just RFPs, because a lot of people have been trained to hunt for RFPs. Yes. So that's the box they check. And now they're excluding themselves from all this stuff that's going on. Yeah. And there you go. So,
Mike, you must have read my mind, because I mean, that was really exactly what I was thinking, because there's two ways that you can look for opportunities, right? I mean, there's one which you should absolutely be doing, which is watching SAM. If you don't understand how to use SAM properly, get with your Procurement Technical Assistance Center for help. You can set up search agents to find certain things that are be rolling down through SAM. Also, the PTACs have a wonderful bid matching service that not only scans SAM, but also those state and local opportunities that are going to be coming down the pipeline that you can see when they come out. But what Michael was just referring to, I believe, is not sitting back and waiting for something to come out. If you do something that is going to help the government in one of these programs that they're making investments in, a lot of people in government are probably sitting there. I'm sure they have some plans inside of kind of how they want to use the money, but not exactly how they're going to execute it or carry out the project. And so as you start to have those conversations down the road with those folks, being able to ask them great questions, I call that part of the qualitative side of market research. It's not the number crunching side necessarily, looking at historical spend data, although that's definitely going to be helpful to kind of find where the big primes and the big agencies who are actually spending in those industries already are, because those firms will probably get a lot of that right off of the front. But also just to go in there and have conversations with folks about what you do after you ask questions. And I think if you can connect what you do with what they're needing, a lot of times those conversations turn into opportunities. And a lot of those opportunities happen kind of, sometimes they get sole source contracts. Sometimes they happen under that 25K cap for federal government where they don't get publicized. But even if they do get publicized, because they've got to follow the procurement rules, if you have the solution and you're having conversations with them, a lot of times some of those specifications will be required based upon what they know is out there. So when Michael mentioned the RFI, that's the agency's requesting information from industry, right? So make sure you take a time to respond to those in the sources sought request. But also, you don't necessarily have to wait to give the right people in the government information at the right time. And said it earlier in the year when we were talking about like looking to increase your opportunities, is just to really increase the conversations that you're having and the relationships that you're building with the right people. And it's not about taking them out to the ball game, but it's showing them that, hey, you're interested, you do something of value inside of this space, and you're ready to go.
Getting on the radar now. Yeah, getting on the radar now. I'll tell you this, it's okay if you miss the boat in the first couple of months of this thing and you're slow to get around, but understand this is a 5-year spending spree. This is a 5-year, like on the show where they give you, 2 minutes to shove everything in the shopping cart. The money's been shoved in the shopping cart, and they're going to be running through the aisles spending it over the next 5 years. Yeah. It's kind of how I look at it. And we don't know on the back end of that 5 years, which one of these programs are going to keep going, which one of these are going to spin off other programs. We don't know. Here is what we have and what we know. And what we know is over the next 5 years, they're going to spend a boatload, a physical boatload of money here. And so you need to get on it right now and be looking at this stuff, because if you're in this industry, we don't know when the next opportunity is going to come. We don't. Yeah. But we know there's an opportunity right before us. We know we're early on the front end enough that you have 3 to 6 months, maybe 9 months to prepare for this and get all your ducks in a row. And so for a lot of companies, this is a once in a company opportunity to get in and do some of this work. Again, you can also be thinking about just the fact that you can now get into new agencies. That's a big thing, and diversify your company by getting into new agencies. And I guarantee you, if these programs get up and running, there's likely going to be investment, even if it's smaller, in the future. And so you can get in, you can do some great work for these folks, you can build a reputation, and then you can build on that after these 5 years instead of just you get in, you get a little bit, and you get out. This is a big opportunity for a lot of folks. So
yeah, absolutely, man. I'm really excited about it. I mean, it's just talking about this for a long time. As you know, we've done, as I mentioned earlier, a podcast. We talked about it before on your podcast, and it's just,
we've been talking about it a year, probably.
I'm really excited to see what's going to come out and the opportunities that this is going to provide. I mean, it's a massive deal. So, Michael, do you have anything else you wanted to throw out there? And I can kind of cap off with a few things we talked about, and then we can wrap it up for today, and then go into our Q&A.
Yeah, I guess the biggest thing is just do your homework. Do your homework, take the time over this Christmas break because we're getting ready to go into the holidays. Take your time over the next 2-3 months to go through, do the keyword search like Carroll recommended. That's the first thing I did when I got in here because I heard certain things were going to be in there and I wanted to keyword and see where those were. And then just start making notes of this stuff, of what agencies you need to target. Because again, I guarantee if you start watching Sam, you start watching articles. Let me leave that one last inside tip here. Instead of just daily searching, go into Google and set up alerts. Go into Google. Yeah. It's free to do. Set up alerts on the keywords associated with this bill and associated with anything else in your business or around government. And you'll start getting these in your inbox on a regular basis. And I think that's a really good little insider tip too.
That's a great one, man. You know, some of the things that I had here on my recap, just, you know, going back, mentioning, you know, read through that bill. We mentioned where you could find it. Google either infrastructure bill, Congress, or if you want the official word is Infrastructure Investment and Job Act, go to the congress.gov website, use the speed reading tactic to get through, hit the keywords first, can kind of digest that. And I also had on my list here, do your homework. Things I was going to say too is that if you know what your NAICS codes are, you can work. If you need some help, work with some of those partners that we mentioned earlier, the PTACs, the BDAs, the other folks that are out there. But I would be taking the NAICS codes and kind of looking at inside a historical spin in usaspending.gov, like what are the big contractors inside of the NAICS codes, for example, that are related to broadband, cybersecurity, roads, whatever, and start to have conversations, get in position with those primes and also with the state and local agencies, start having conversations with them, find out about, okay, how do I get positioned to be in your vendor rosters here? Usually there's, just like Sam, it's just a registration process to get positioned in there. Well, that's it. That's the recap. Man. One of the things I did want to say that if you joined us here, again, I mentioned it earlier on, but join us in Govology Nation. That's our private LinkedIn group. And if you want to go there, it's govology.com/nation. But we have a lot of great discussions there about GovCon topics. And we're going to, I'm sure, be having a lot of blog articles by some of our SMEs and other discussion topics all related around this whole infrastructure package. So join us over there. And again, Michael, do you want to give the URL for your resource page there?
Yeah, I think you can go to federal-access.com/Govology. That's one of the simplest places you can go, and you can get a free account over at Federal Access, so you can get different free resources we have there.
Absolutely. Take advantage of that. And I don't think I threw out the URL, but if you want to get in Govology Nation, go to govology.com/nation. That'll bring you over into our LinkedIn group. Go ahead and request access and we'll get you in there. So, well, that was a great cap off of the topic, I think, Michael, and we'll close out there today, but I'm sure there's more to come.
There's a lot more to come.
All right. Well, hey, thanks for everyone for being with us, and we look forward to seeing you again on our next episode. Take care. And let's go into our Q&A. I see that we already have a hand up, so I'm going to go to Mr. William over here. And
yes, I unmuted as well.
Oh, awesome, man.
Okay, thanks. I really enjoyed the program, first of all. The question I wanted to have in the trucking business, and we haul high-chat equipment and freight, as well as 18-wheelers for vans and flatbeds and things like that. And I know you was mentioning about the NAICS code and things like that. What's the best way? Because I get sometimes bombarded with a lot of different information through different sources that's not always coming through a credible source, like other companies trying to get you to come through them So I'm trying to distinguish between whether it's from SAMs, from the government, or whether it's from outside sources, people trying to get you to buy into their system to help do business with the government. I'm just trying to narrow that down.
Yeah, that is a great question. And that was an issue, actually, we talked about on one of our previous episodes, just kind of getting the right information. And there's some good companies out there in private industry, but there are also some scams and some shams. So a couple of tips there. When you get an email, look at the domain that it's coming from. So typically, if it's from the government, it'll be from a .gov domain. So look for that. If you find yourself going into a specific website, also make sure to check the extension there that it's a .gov website. If you are working with any of the partners that we mentioned earlier, the Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, NBDAs, DOT folks, forward on that email to whoever you're working with, because they'll be able to say, yep, that's legit, or no, this is maybe not so much legit, but we could help you out with what maybe you're looking to do. So if you're looking to kind of really find NAICS codes that's related to hotshot or flatbed trucks, there's definitely some help that can be provided to you out there inside of that to find where those NAICS codes are going if you don't already know that for yourself.
Okay. And I found out about you all, for example, through PTAC. That's what I used through the University of Houston and the government.
Awesome.
So that's how I came across you guys. But I really appreciate you answering my question as well.
Hey, thanks for asking.
Awesome. There was also a question about what are informative sources small businesses can monitor, have updates on the spending bill. So here's at a high level, you're not going to see updates on the spending bill anymore because it's signed. So there's not going to be updates per se on the bill exactly, but you are going to see stuff on these programs. So the thing that I recommend is if you're looking for updates on a specific program, monitor that in SAM. You can also, again, set up the Google alerts, those sort of things to say, hey, I'm going to go back to this just because I'm fascinated by the invasive plant elimination program. Put that in the Google alerts so that you know, hey, this is getting done, because there's so many programs in here. I guarantee you when RFIs, RFPs, sources sought, when all those things come out, I guarantee you a lot of them are not going to reference the bill. So if you're only, or the law, whatever you want to call it now, if you're only looking for this bill, you're not going to see a lot of stuff just because that's not what it's going to come under. Like the tribal highway program, it's going to come out the tribal highway program. So the best bet is to go through there, grab the keywords of the things you want to look for, go in SAM, regularly look for those, set up the Google alerts, and that's going to be the best way to find out a lot of this stuff.
One thing I will mention on that is typically that whenever these big spending programs happen, it did back in 2009. It happens with the hurricane relief funding that gets put out there. The government will usually code spending inside of the historical spend data. So once the spending starts happening, and I'm sure that this act will have its own code inside of this spend data. So if you want to kind of track and monitor what's going on with that, again, I'm sure that whenever that code gets designated, your PTAC counselor or other folks that you might be working with will likely know what that is. If you want to check back with us in about 6 months, we'll probably know what that is too. So,
and somebody sent me a direct message. It says, any hint as to how to set up Google Alerts? So if you just type in Google Alerts in Google, it'll take you to where to set that up. But here's the challenge. A lot of people believe like there's only one or two ways to do it. Like, hey, it's this one keyword or that keyword. The best searchers, I consider myself kind of like a ninja researcher, is we use trial and error. So I'll set up keywords, I'll set up phrases. And what I basically do is look at over the next few weeks, because it'll send you daily, weekly, as it happens, alerts, things like that. As it sends you stuff, look at which ones are actually of value, which ones aren't, and then just go deactivate the ones that aren't. And so I'll set up a handful of different ones when there's a new thing. Again, like, so the Denali Access System program, I'm going to set that up and I'm going to start searching for those kind of things. And I'm going to realize, oh, none of these really are what I want. Delete, 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 delete. Oh, this is one. I'm going to keep it. And it's just rinse and repeat for everything you do. So the more you put into the system initially, the more you can help kind of figure out what's the right keywords or not. And the same goes for SAM. I think a lot of people say, well, I do hot shot or whatever it is, trucking. And they just use the one keyword and that's all they search for. But the government's either not buying it that way or they're using a combination of keywords, or Carroll's using trucking and I'm using hot shot or whatever it may be. And so if we use multiple variations of those keywords when we're initially searching, we'll figure out what the government is using. And then you can go, 80% of the time, these are the 4 keywords I need to search. But you know what? Once a month, I'm going to search this oddball one because Carroll's an oddball and uses a weird word when he puts out stuff.
Oddball.
And there you go. And so it's simple with stuff like that. It's just being able to use multiple different types of searching and keywords, because at the end of the day, it's human beings putting all this stuff out there and they're going to use the word they think, or they're going to misspell it or something like that. So
absolutely. I love the tip on the Google alerts. It's really helpful to just kind of keep track of like things going on out there and just kind of keep your eyes and ears open is really the advice there. And that's a great way to do it.
Somebody asked the question about, are we familiar with NAICS code searches using characters to search? And when you get into that, there's a lot of different ways you can use the little quotes, question marks, all those different things. This is what I found is the new SAM system kind of starts throwing up on itself sometimes when you do that. So if for old school folks, yeah, we love to use those different special characters in our searches. I, a lot of times don't. I will use quotes for a phrase versus a single word. So if you type it in 3 different words, you put it in quotes, and that way it should grab it only if it's in all 3 of those words, that type of thing. That's probably the most common stuff I do. But some people will say, I want this word plus this word, and they're not related. They're going to be in different areas, so they're not technically a phrase. So I just say just play around with it and see what works. But some of that in the new system, it doesn't necessarily like initially, when we started in the new SAM system, if you type in a phrase, it would grab all the words and separate them. And it didn't matter if you put them in quotes or whatever. And now it's better. It's not doing that anymore. But there's all kind of quirks to the SAM.gov searches. So,
to say the least there.
Yeah. And that is the least I'll say about it. So,
yeah. Oh, well, Paul's got his hand up over there. It's his real hand, not his virtual hand.
I was going to address this right before him. Is I know some people were saying audio issues were going on here. As we're doing the show, we know we can hear each other and it's working that way. We're doing our best. So like I said, a call-in number and things like that. If you can't hear the show for whatever reason, always remember there is the replay that we're going to post on the Govology website. So be sure and go check in there. Sometimes it's probably just something on your PC, some odd thing, but it's always being recorded. So you can always go and check it out later if we can't do it, because we can't always help you while we're trying to run the show. So I just want to say that real quick.
Thank you, Mike. We should put some information out for how folks can kind of tap into support. Typically, if you are putting into the chat there, you kind of give you some tips. We usually have our support folks ready at the ready. And so that's something I should have mentioned in the beginning, but thanks for mentioning that. Let's go to Paul. I see Paul had his hand up.
I appreciate that. By the way, with reactions, I only had 2 reactions, one like that.
That's great. We take those too.
Yeah. I hope this question isn't too detailed, but I provide professional services, real estate consulting services, appraisal services related to right-of-way work in eminent domain. And generally, the work that I pursued has been through state DOTs, and I haven't done a lot of pursuing this kind of work directly with the Fed, or didn't do a lot of search on SAM.gov related to that. And I know this is specific to an industry, and it might not be in your wheelhouse, but should I be looking for right-of-way activity on SAM.gov, or should I be focusing on the money that's going to funnel down to the state DOTs?
That's a great question. You know, what I would do personally, if there's something that I'm involved with, that I'm working on, or if I'm helping another client, let me share my screen with you real quick. One of my actual favorite tools is not even usaspending.gov, but it's FPDS, the Federal Procurement Data System. That's at fpds.gov. And their kind of working to phase this out, you can go here. What I like to use this for, you could get lost in the weeds very quickly here, but what I like to use this for is it contains this repository of a lot of things that have happened in the past. And you can go into this little Google-like search box. So for example, give me a keyword that is most relevant to what you do.
Right of way.
So if we just put that in the quotation marks, you can kind of capture that together. And if we hit that, and then there's only one more thing that we do here. If we go to the right side of the screen and I hit the date signed, that's going to shift up to the latest things that have been occurring. So not everything's going to necessarily be relative, maybe inside of this, but if you, as you go down this, every card that you see in this system right here is actually a contract action or a modification that's happening inside of the government related to that service. There you can actually see that you've got this actual company that's named Tierra Right-of-Way Services. So I'm guessing they probably also do something similar. There's the NAICS code that it was procured under, and there's even a product service code. So the NAICS code is the 6-digit code that basically codifies the industry. Product service codes more relevant to specifically the product and the service. So you can kind of get to see a little bit of that nomenclature there. And you can go actually down each one of these and see different things. Now, some of these things, if you see a $0 obligation, that's going to just basically say that they're probably doing some type of modification to a contract. But as you can see, there's also, here's some money right here. Now, the other thing is that actually, if you click this view link, that'll open up the record for that specific contract action. And you can see some interesting data inside of this that might be insightful to you, like how much was awarded, how much is the current total, who's the contractor that's being awarded this. That might be a contractor that you can work with through teaming or subcontracting opportunities. Here's their phone number, here's where they're located. Also, some interesting information is that this is not always very accurate, but sometimes it is. So it says this action will set aside funding for a real estate support contractor for the KC acquisition. And if you look there, you can see how it was competed. This one was not competed under simplified acquisition. So it looks like this was some kind of sole source contract. That's where I would start. But if you're also not yet working with your PTAC, also get with them and they can kind of help you maybe further drill down on some of this stuff to kind of find what's relevant for you. And that's relevant to anybody that's on this call today. You can do that specific to your industry or keyword. Very easy to use. That's what I would recommend, Paul.
That was extremely helpful. I have the ability to provide environmental services. So it was very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, and teaming's huge in this marketplace as well. So reaching out to some of these vendors that you find that's already getting the money and say, hey, here's what I do. They're a fit for some extra support that you get. These prime contractors are going to need some support. Like I said earlier, they're going to start getting tapped out, I think, and they're going to be looking for well-qualified small businesses, and they're going to be looking for workers as well.
The last thing I wanted to say was, I was always under the assumption that most of the local DLT work, the money funneled down into the states where they would use that money for different.
A lot of it does. Some stays at the federal level.
But no, I mean, with everything going on, I'm just trying to look at federal work in general to see if it's there. And that helped out a lot. I just want to thank you very much. And by the way, everybody that does this thing, the Zoom, maybe I'm the only person. I only get 2 reactions, this and this. So I never get the hands up one. So thanks a lot for your help. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And I would recommend one more thing, Paul, is do that keyword search in the bill. I mean, I just did it real quick and I found a dozen places where it mentioned right of way. And so that's just one keyword. You probably have 10 that you should be looking at, and you'll see, are there programs? Again, what you want to link here is your services to a program. So like you may find under, again, I'll bring this up, the Denali Access System program, that they're going to require one of those services or a similar keyword that you have. And so if you can connect a keyword to a program, now you can start monitoring that program under that agency over the next 6 months, because it may be quiet for 5-6 months. And then all of a sudden, boom, they start acting on this thing, and you're not looking at it because you're not focusing on the Denali program because you didn't know it was going to have this type of stuff. And then some of these things are also where you got to be a little intuitive to go, hey, I know they're going to be building new roads. I know they're going to be doing this. I know it's going to involve eminent domain. I know it's going to involve this. So again, out of these programs where they're doing this stuff, like their railway highway crossings, they're going to invest $1.2 billion in that. I guarantee you they're going to take some land to do it. And so in order to do those things, they're going to need a guy like you. But at the high level, that's not going to be the focus of that RFP. It's going to be one piece of a bigger project to do those rail crossings. And so,
even on a local, based out of Illinois, but all of the RFPs are multidisciplinary. So you'll see appraisal review, environmental assessment work, things of that nature. So
where are you at in Illinois?
Chicago.
Oh, Chicago. I'm down in the Champaign area, so just a couple hours.
Oh, is that right? Practically neighbors.
Practically neighbors. Yeah. So somebody asked the question, how do we find out the program names? Go open the bill. And as you go open the bill, you're going to see program name after program name all throughout the bill.
And I want to thank some of the thanks, Paul. And I want to also thank some of the PTAC counselors that are and program managers that are in this session with us that have posted some tips here. So I think what we're going to do is we'll try to download this transcript because there's a lot of great comments and a lot of great links inside of this and share that back on our feed there on our website, or we'll post it on LinkedIn. So awesome.
Man,
Michael,
you got a lot of Cajuns in here today.
I know. I saw that, man.
There's a bunch of them. I love it.
Some Bertrands and
yeah, a little bit of everybody. We got the Louisiana PTAC in here, so I feel at home. I'm from Sulphur, Louisiana. For all you on here from Louisiana, all right.
Well,
man.
Michael, I think that's a wrap, huh?
I think that's a wrap. We could probably talk for hours about this stuff. This is a great topic, so I'm glad you thought of this one. So
yeah, I can't take the credit for it, man. Thank you. So. Yeah, great research, man. And let me know when you get through the other 900 pages of the bill, and we'll probably be posting some updates. By the way, one last tip. If you guys are not connected to myself or Michael on LinkedIn, look for us and shoot us out an invitation to connect. I know Michael does a better job than I do of posting some cool updates with things. So that will be my last recommendation for the day.
Great recommendation. Thank you.
And I got your comment there, Ms. Williams, on for the next topic, how to price your services. That would be a good topic to talk about.
That is a good topic. We could have Jenny on with us to talk that.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, thank you. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And again, we'll see you next month. We actually have shifted to a monthly session for the time being on these. And I just want to take a moment also to say thank you to everyone that's been taking part in the Gavology community. Thank you, Michael, to yourself, you and Josh. You guys are such great partners. And we go into the next week, Thanksgiving holidays. I hope everyone has just a really great time and take an opportunity to get some rest and relaxation with your family members over Thanksgiving. I'm going to get me some boudin.
All right. Well, hey, have a great holiday, everybody. And we'll see you next time.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.